From WCI 3 Plus, with your host Kevin Lighty, this is Behind the Forecast.
Welcome back to Behind the Forecast. That's me right there, Chief Meteorologist Kevin Lighty. These are some of the different places you can give me a like and a follow and all that, so check those out to stay up to date with me when you're not up here with me on our Behind the Forecast show on the WCA 3 Plus app. Let's get to talking about what's coming up later on because, exciting, we're going to be talking to the National Weather Service in Lincoln, okay, as they're going to tell us a little bit more about the upcoming winter. The NOAA winter forecast came out recently, and we're going to delve into that a little bit more and ask some questions about what we can expect for the upcoming winter. So if you're curious about winter and what we could see, stick around. I'll give you a little bit of a hint. Snow lovers, this one might be for you. I'm not going to say anything more than that. All right, viral weather video time. Here we go. Number 5, and this is actually going to be a mudslide in California. Man, you imagine having to go and clear mud from area roads. This was a 3.6 mile stretch of the Topanga Canyon Boulevard, State Route 27 between the Pacific Coast Highway and Grandview Drive, out there clearing up after a mudslide occurred. So obviously causing some issues out there, but boy, we've got enough things to deal with around here. I'm glad, mudslides really aren't a thing here in our neck of the woods, right? All right, video number 4. It's kind of like death taxes and Hawaii Kilauea volcano erupting. And that's exactly what is happening there, as you can see in Hawaii. I just love it, though. And I know I've showed this several times with the eruptions that have occurred over there. But every single time I see it, I'm just like, man, this thing is amazing. It almost looks like it's in slow motion when it's occurring. So figured I'd share that one with you. All right, let's go from hot to cold. Back to California, though. This is the Northern Sierras of California. Look at that beautiful snow video. I know some of you are going, no, we don't want snow, right? We're not ready for that. I know it's starting to get cooler here this week, but they've got some snow out there, and that's what they are seeing in their neck of the woods. Okay, I know. Let's get past that for some of you that are not ready for it. No, nobody's ready for this, and this is kind of a devastating situation in Alaska. They actually got hit by a typhoon. This is Kipnuk, Alaska. Typhoon Halong actually did a ton of damage out there. Standing water, widespread flooding. Now, this is a part of the western Alaskan front that's considered tundra. So a little bit more isolated, but they got hit hard. You can see this is drone video kind of flying over that area. Tons of flooding and, just bad stuff. They had to evacuate a bunch of people to Anchorage. But just look at those buildings tossed around by the waters there from a typhoon. So bad news there in Alaska. All right, video number 1 this week. This is just wild. We take you to France. It's north of France. I did take French lessons, but I'm not even going to try to pronounce where this is. It's a tornado, though, that occurred north of France. This is wild. They don't get tornadoes over there. But you can see here, I'm going to let you kind of watch the video. You can kind of see it right there, little guy. You don't see the fully condensed funnel all the way, but you can see it right there at the bottom doing some damage there. Pretty wild stuff for them to get a tornado like that. 3 cranes came down within seconds, one striking a clinic out there. Wild stuff. France getting tornadoes of all places. Well, there you go, folks. All right, coming up here, just a little bit. We're going to take a short break and come back with you. And we're going to be talking about the upcoming winter. Just what does Mother Nature have in store for us for the upcoming winter season? We'll ask some of those questions. That is coming up with our interview portion of the segment right here on Behind the Forecast.
From WCI 3 Plus, with your host, Kevin Lighty, this is Behind the Forecast.
All right, everybody, welcome back here into Behind the Forecast. I'm WCA3 Chief Meteorologist Kevin Lighty, and I'm glad to have you guys back here with us again. So, always with the show, we have the interview portion of the show here where we talk to somebody in the industry, somebody that's impacted by weather, or an expert in this. And listen, I got to tell you, I found one here. Down the road is a little place called the National Weather Service. They're in Lincoln, Illinois. They serve the central Illinois region here and great partners with us here. And we're going to talk a little bit about winter. I know, listen, it's been warm lately and we're finally getting some cool weather, but winter is almost upon us. It's going to start to feel like it here a lot more. And we want to get a little bit more insight into what our friends at the National Weather Service and NOAA are thinking about the upcoming winter. So we bring in with us Mike Albano. How you doing, Mike? How you doing over there, bud?
Oh, we're doing just fine. Hey, thanks, Kevin. It's good to be on with WCIA.
Yeah, so Mike, National Weather Service meteorologist over there. Give the people a little bit of background about yourself and kind of your career and kind of coming up in the Weather Service.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I just so happened to be rocking my Valparaiso. There it is, swag here. Didn't know you were going to call me today, but I'm glad to be on. But that's home for me. I grew up in Northwest Indiana. I'll tell you what, I probably wouldn't be sitting in this chair now if it wasn't for Lake Michigan and my curiosity of lake effect snow. So it is a winter phenomena that ultimately drove me into the industry. So graduated high school, went to the other school down the road, studied at Valpo for a few years, and then hopped into the Weather Service. I've been in here 7 or 8 years now, and Central Illinois, of course, is just a fantastic place to forecast the weather. We get a little bit of everything. So it feels good to be anchored here in the community.
Yeah, so you covered a lot of weather over the years, and from severe weather to now upcoming winter weather, and that's what a lot of people it's starting to become a little bit more top of mind to people is what is the winter going to be like? First off, can you tell me how hard is it to try to forecast a season 3 months ahead? Talk a little bit about the challenges that you face when trying to come up with something like that.
It is incredibly hard. There's not just one thing that modulates the winter weather outlook. There's just off of the top of my head, 4, maybe 5 things that kind of drive the winter weather outlook as we head into it. And usually that number one thing, it's ENSO, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation. That seems to be the main driver of these outlooks that NOAA will come out with every middle of October to try and give folks, a quick glimpse of which way the data is trending. Are we going to be near normal? Might it be a little bit warmer or mild? Will we be on the cooler or wetter side? So there's quite a few things that modulate the winter weather outlook. It is incredibly hard to try and nail down.
Yeah, listen, and this too as being a meteorologist, we get flack for not, oh, you guys don't know what it is 7 days out, let alone 2 months out. But there are still indicators and signs and things that can point to, I guess, general trends, right? I mean, a forecast for, a season like that is you're looking at trends and those indicators there to try to give you at least an idea, right? Is that about right?
Yeah, it's funny too, because like July, you'll be in the grocery store and you'll see, oh, okay, there's the Farmer's Almanac. What's it got to say? What are they doing? And then August comes and there's great folklore. It's like one of them is count the number of foggy mornings, and that will be the number of trackable snows this winter. And then we get right into September. We're looking at the woolly worms. We're like, okay, maybe it is going to be a bad winter. And then end of October, November, of course, it's the persimmon seeds, and is it fork shaped? So there's so many great folklore that's kind of baked into people's perception of how the winter might be. We try and get a little scientific behind it. But then something else funny happens about halfway through the winter. That's when the groundhog comes up, right?
Well,
And that
he's
really
trying to tell
tells
us.
us, right?
He's trying to tell us if spring's coming or not. But yeah, we're usually like, all right, let's go. We're done with this stuff. We're ready for spring.
And then winter's over. Exactly. But yeah, no, however deep into the weeds you want to get into it, I'd be happy to tell you what I know, what I think I know,
Yeah.
and what can kind of drive the bus here as we get into the
Well,
next 6 weeks.
well, let's talk about some previous winters here, which have been, as some would say, non-winters. We've not had a ton of snow, so to speak. As far as that goes, we've had a lot of smaller events. you know, what are you kind of seeing here in terms of, what we've had? That becoming more normal to not have the normal, because we always hear the people say, oh, boy, back in my day, it used to snow a ton, and I walked uphill both ways, and 17 inches of snow. So is what we're seeing now becoming the norm, or is this just kind of a little bit of a blip in the scope of things?
It's funny you bring that up. I do recall looking back in like the late 70s, and those were some of the most harsh, snowiest winters, probably, going back a generation or two in our life. Think about like our parents or grandparents. The 70s for the Midwest were just brutal. Late 70s in particular, there were some just terrible winters. And then, where have we been lately? I feel like so. For those who don't know me, I moved here at the end of the pandemic. So at the end of 2020, that was my first Central Illinois winter, and I got to tell you, it has been a little underwhelming on the snowfall side of things. Growing up in the snow belt at the base of Lake Michigan, I know we're further south latitude here. It is a little warmer, but I do feel like each winter I kind of have to taper my expectations of how much snowfall we're going to get. Um,
little less down here than up north, right? I mean, that's just natural.
yeah.
But yeah, I even when I was a kid, I remember, it just seemed like I got out of school more, and we had more of those 5, 6, 7 inch snows, and those seem to become, you might get one of those a year now, then a bunch of little smaller ones.
Yeah, I think we were looking at the data just last winter. We were trying to, and the trend has definitely been down, right? The number of 6 inch snowfalls per winter. You go back over the last 30 years and you kind of do a best trend line. It's down. It's down for whatever reason. It just we're not quite seeing the number of significant snowfalls that maybe we did a decade or two before.
All right, so here's what people kind of want to know. What are you guys seeing from your seat over there? Kind of what I know Noah's kind of put out their outlook and whatnot, and kind of just give me a little bit of your thoughts and kind of what Noah's thinking here as far as the upcoming winter from your guys' perspective so far.
Yeah, I'll be happy to take a crack at it. And it's the Climate Prediction Center. It's the climatology folks that will kind of draw up these outlooks each fall preceding the winter season. And what they've come up with specifically for kind of the Great Lakes and the Midwest, it kind of leans below normal temperature. So maybe a little bit cooler than what is considered normal in a given winter season.
So we could kind of see things going kind of either way, essentially, right? I mean, you might a little bit of everything. Is that kind of how you would kind of decipher that, I guess you'd say?
Yeah, and I would say there's just no strong trend on whether this particular winter season is going to be warmer than last winter or cooler than last winter or even the last couple. It's just strictly measured up against a 30-year climatology of what we would consider a normal winter temperature to be. And so what this graphic basically tells us is that there's no clear signal right now with all the tools that we have in our tool belt that it's going to be one way or the other.
So let's take a look at this. So this one's got me This one's got me going, oh, what do we got here? So go ahead and explain what we're looking at here.
Yeah, and again, this is very La Nina look to it, down around the Gulf Coast, the Southwest U.S. Warmer, drier. That's usually the storm track for them, and then again up across the Pacific Northwest, and then it just kind of depends. There's other factors that will kind of drive the bus, but it looks like in this case here, you could see the above normal precipitation outlook for the Ohio River Valley. It encompasses pretty much the entire Great Lakes, even extending down, uh, getting closer to the southern Mississippi Valley. So, yeah, I mean, you see a signal like this, and you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe we will have, a fairly wet winter. Again, I don't want people to look at this graphic and say, okay, it's I see green on here. It's going to be wet, and that means it's going to be snowy, and that's not necessarily the case, right? We looked at the temperatures, which kind of gave us equal chances, right? So that means some of these storm tracks that track up across the central U.S., we could still be on the warm or the rain side of things. It could still be a wet winter, and that doesn't necessarily correlate to a snowy winter.
Yeah, so
But,
that's talking precipitation. That's not a snowfall map. That's precipitation, which could very well be rain in many instances, right?
correct. Yeah, it's an important distinction.
Yeah. So if we get some colder in here with a little bit more of an active storm track, right? I think obviously the last 3 months we have not been in an active storm track at all. Do you see the jet stream kind of shifting a little bit, giving us more of those favorable kind of tracks with kind of this La Nina pattern?
Yeah, and that's kind of like the one aspect that we don't really know. It's the behavior of that jet stream. So again, a lot of these outlooks are modulated by ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, right? Basically, that just it looks at sea surface temperature anomalies across the equatorial Pacific, and based on that, it kind of gives us a first guess of whether we're going to be dealing, with a mild winter, maybe a cold winter, and it can also kind of give us an idea on some of those precipitation, marks that we had seen. Now, there's other factors too that you know really could make or break a seasonal forecast, and so we start to think about. Like the polar vortex, right? That was a really hot buzzword maybe about a decade ago. I recall being
Polar
in college,
vortex. Oh yeah.
canceling classes like early on in like 2014, and then I think 2015 was also a pretty cold January. But this idea of the polar vortex, right? Um, we look at different teleconnection patterns. We look at kind of the large scale atmospheric anomalies, and so there's many different components that go into a winter forecast. And again, it is very challenging. I'd be happy to try and take a crack at breaking that down and explaining it as if you're an 8-year-old, what some of those concepts are and what they can bring to our region. But man, it's complex. It's really hard to nail down.
It is, and every year we try to give it, a crack at it and look at all the different things. There's, you know, 13 different acronyms, NAO, like all these things you're looking at to try to come up with that. Because they're all kind of connected in a way, like you said, the telekinesis of it all. And it's a tough thing to do. So here's our, we got about 5 minutes left here. You know, Give me your personal. What does Mike think about the upcoming winter? What do you think? Where's
The
Mike?
free thinker.
Free thinker. You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah, some of the things that I'm just kind of preliminary looking through, and it does seem to be like the storm track is going to kind of line up across the central U.S. I think it is going to be a wet winter. I actually think it's going to be a pretty cold winter too. And I'm going a little off script here, but there's some things that we can kind of go off and look at. again, one of them is that polar vortex, right? It's this ginormous lobe of Arctic air that sits about 60,000 feet above the surface over the North Pole, and we try and assess whether it's that polar vortex is going to be stable in a winter or unstable. If it's stable and we have signal that it's going to remain stable, there's a really good chance that that Arctic air kind of stays bottled up. Whereas if we start to see some cracks in that polar vortex, things start to become unstable. We're much more likely to see some of that Arctic air spill equatorward, kind of across the north central US, across the Great Lakes region. Um, and so what we're seeing as we head into this winter is maybe a polar vortex that isn't quite as stable. So we have some reason to believe that we are going to get some perhaps robust shots of Arctic air, um, probably not until the back half of winter. So January to March kind of seems to be that time frame where we might start to see that polar vortex break down and bring us some of the extreme cold weather. So there's that, and then there's the whole snowfall side of things, and just kind of the way the large scale anomalies are setting up. And I think we've seen this a little bit in just how blocky the atmosphere has been, but um, we're starting to see maybe signals in some of the longer range models that are suggesting that we're going to see like a blob of warm air just kind of sit over the North Pacific, maybe the Aleutians. We call that a ridge. And usually that will correlate then downstream over the central U.S. with kind of more of a persistent troughiness. And it's the troughs that kind of bring us our lousy weather, our low pressure storm systems across this part of the country. And so what we think is going to maybe occur is that these storm systems are going to kind of come out of the Pacific Northwest, kind of across the Great Plains, and then across the mid-Mississippi Valley into central Illinois. So it looks like the polar vortex could deliver some cold weather. It's starting to look like the storm track is going to line up such that we do receive more low pressure or more weather systems, even if they're just your Alberta Clipper type systems, the fast hitting, 1 to 3 inches, which we have not seen a lot of the last couple of years, by the way. It's starting to look like we might see more of those types of systems move through. So again, there's a lot of it. One thing that I haven't brought up is just kind of another component to it all. It's
Severe
something
weather?
we call analogs.
Or analogs? Okay, yeah.
And basically, it's just a big scrapbook, right? We keep a big scrapbook of past winters. And what we see is, this is, the atmospheric pattern right now, it's starting to look a lot like it did back in 2017 or, 2004 or something like that. And then we can kind of look back at those winters and say, there was quite a bit of snow in those winters. Maybe there will be quite a bit of snow this winter too. That's basically what an analog forecast is. And you'll like this, Kevin.
Here we go.
So the analog closest to what we're seeing right now, it's the winter of 2010, 2011, which of course is famous for the Groundhog Day blizzard, right?
Oh, the blizzard. That's right. February of 2011. Yeah.
So that dumped about a foot of snow, brought blizzard conditions across much of the Champaign area and kind of the broader central Illinois area.
I was in Springfield, Missouri when that happened, and we also got about a foot of snow down there. You're familiar with Springfield, Missouri, down there too. Used to hang out down that way.
Yep, yeah. I started my career down there, and I think that storm still takes the cake. Since we turned into the 21st century. I think the last 25 years, that's probably the storm for them. It's that Groundhog's Day blizzard.
Yeah, that's right. I remember it. I remember it vividly. My first real blizzard, and I never thought I'd catch the blizzard in southern Missouri, but there I was in 2011. So it sounds like some positive things maybe for snow lovers more than what we've had in the past, but you really never know, right? For sure.
And that's the caveat. It's just, as much as the science has evolved and the technology has evolved, there's just too many things that go into that pattern that can make it bust or make it overachieve.
Yeah.
We'll see. Stay tuned.
So it's a we'll see. Stay tuned. I love it. We're running out of time here, Mike. But listen, man, I appreciate you hopping in here with us. Maybe we'll have you on again on another show. Many different topics, obviously, that we could discuss and cover. I'm sure lots of hot button issues and topics. I'm sure we could get back with you. And so, if you're willing, maybe we'll bring you back again in another show. Is that cool?
Let's run it back, man. We should do it more.
Let's do it. Let's do it. There he is. That right there. There he is. Show off that Valpo shirt again. There you go.
There it is,
Represent
man.
Valpo. There
Hey,
you go.
basketball. We're Indiana basketball. Don't look at the football. Don't look at the football.
Perfect. All right, Mike. Thanks a lot for joining us here behind the forecast, and we'll see what the winter brings. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to wrap things up here with us for Behind the Forecast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.